All right, diving in today, folks, we're taking a look at the world of Bob Camblin.
Bob Camblin.
Yeah, you sent over a really interesting collection of stuff about him.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We've got writings from the man himself, bits and pieces of his biography, even some YouTube commentary that analyzes his lithographs, plus some really insightful reviews and forewords from books that actually feature his work.
Yeah.
So our mission, if you will, is to really kind of boil down and distill what Camblin was all about as an artist and offer our listeners a clear path to understanding his perspective, without drowning them in a sea of information.
Yeah, exactly. We want to unearth these recurring themes in his work, right? And the philosophies that really kind of shaped his vision. I mean,
Yeah.
it was an enigmatic one to be sure, but undeniably compelling.
It is. It's interesting how he's this significant figure, but even the biography you sent kind of points to how
Quite a
he's almost a bit of a mystery.
well, yeah, and just thousands of his artworks are out there, but they rarely appear on the market. Right.
And when they do, they're quickly acquired, often at pretty considerable prices,
Mhm.
and so that contributes, I think, to the intrigue.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you wonder what's behind it all.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's start unpacking this.
Here,
Camblin, he was born in Oklahoma back in 1928.
Oklahoma. Okay.
Yeah, and you can tell right away, I mean, just looking at his background, he was a creative force, worked across a huge range of mediums,
Right.
oils, acrylics, watercolors, drawings, prints, even painted paper.
Wow.
The guy did it all.
Mm.
Strong foundation in art, Kansas City Art Institute, and then boom, Fulbright scholarship to Italy.
That's quite the resume.
It is, and we'll definitely dig into that Italian period a bit more because it sounds like it was pretty formative.
Sure.
And then she spends a big chunk of his career teaching at different universities before making this kind of like a dramatic shift to a nomadic existence.
Interesting.
Yeah, completely dedicated to his art, like a total immersion. And what's really interesting is how his style is often described as iconoclastic.
Like he was breaking the mold, right? But at the same time, he was so highly regarded by his peers, by other artists, by collectors.
Right.
It's this weird kind of push and pull, like he's both rebellious and respected.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating paradox. And it speaks to the depth and the complexity of his work, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit and talk about his early influences, his roots.
Yeah.
Growing up in Ponca City, Oklahoma, it sounds like that left some pretty lasting impressions on him.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the biography mentions the Marland Estate and the Pioneer Woman statue.
Okay.
These were these prominent, I guess you could say, landmarks, visual elements
Yeah.
that were just part of his world, And it makes you wonder how those things might have seeped into his art later on, maybe in ways he wasn't even aware of.
It's amazing how deeply formative those early visual environments can be for an artist.
Right.
I mean, even seemingly monumental public art can become part of their subconscious visual library in a way,
Uh-huh.
and then, maybe resurfaced in unexpected ways
Yeah.
much later in their career.
Yeah, it's like our brains are constantly absorbing these things, even when we don't realize it.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just visual stuff for Camblin.
Sorry.
Apparently, this guy was a huge reader from a very young age.
Oh, wow.
We're talking Ralph Waldo Emerson, the I Ching, haiku.
That's quite a mix.
Yeah, that's like an intellectual cocktail, if you will.
For sure.
And you can't help but see how that would shape his thinking, right?
Right.
I mean, Emerson, with all that transcendentalism and self-reliance, the I Ching and its focus on change and interconnectedness, haiku, this like distillation of beauty into these incredibly concise forms.
Right.
It's all there in the background, informing his artistic vision.
Absolutely. Those early reading habits, they offer us a real window, into the intellectual and the philosophical foundations that kind of nourished his creativity.
Yeah, it's like he was building this framework in his mind long before he ever picked up a paintbrush.
Right.
And then there's Italy, the Fulbright scholarship.
Italy.
The biography makes it pretty clear that this was a pivotal time for him.
Yeah.
The Uffizi Gallery with all of those Renaissance masterpieces, just incredible beauty and grandeur.
Right.
But then on the other side, you have the Catacombe dei Cappuccini in Palermo, which are basically these underground tunnels filled with preserved bodies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of visual experience.
It's a bit more macabre.
It is, but it's fascinating, right? Like this juxtaposition of, on the one hand, celebrating human achievement, And on the other hand, this stark confrontation with mortality, with the passage of time.
That's a powerful duality for an artist to grapple with.
Yeah, and it's something that seems to run through a lot of his work. This
Yeah.
sense of impermanence, of things constantly changing and decaying.
Yeah, and the mummy imagery that's mentioned in the biography, that definitely seems to stem from this period.
For sure. I mean, those catacombs, it's like they're frozen in time, right?
Yeah.
These figures from the past, preserved, but also in a state of decay.
Yeah, it's haunting.
It is. There's a lot to think about there.
For sure.
Okay, so the biography also briefly touches on some of his early artistic phases.
Okay.
It mentions abstract impressionism and then a later style that he called musha volantis.
Uses volantes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, can you give us a little background on those, how they fit into his overall development as an artist?
Sure. So the abstract impressionism, that suggests, an early fascination with non-representational forms, right?
Okay.
Like the expressive power of the paint itself, the gesture, the feeling.
More about the process than the end result, in a way.
Exactly, exactly.
That,
And then the Musha Volantes, which emerged in the 80s, that was something quite different.
okay.
The name itself, it's French for uh, flying flies, or, like those little eye floaters you sometimes
Right.
see.
Yeah.
And the style itself was characterized by these dots and dashes, creating almost optical illusions.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was about actively challenging the viewer's perception, moving beyond, passive observation to something more conceptual.
So he's not just trying to create something beautiful or aesthetically pleasing.
Right, it's more about engaging the mind.
He wants you to think, to question what you're seeing.
Exactly, and it shows this continuous evolution, this constant pushing of boundaries, experimenting with new ideas.
Always searching, always exploring.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the big themes that run through Campbell's work.
Okay, yeah.
One that really jumps out, especially when you look at those lithographs, Once Upon a Time in Dave's backyard, is this connection to Zen philosophy and the idea of the present moment.
Right, right. And the YouTube commentary you shared and some of the book excerpts, they really shed light on that.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he uses these visual pieces to explore these really deep, kind of abstract concepts. So, Once Upon a Time, with that title, you immediately think of stories, right? The past, narratives.
Yeah. And the visuals, too, those swirling lines, it does feel very narrative.
Yeah, like a journey through time or maybe even through memory.
Exactly. And the commentary, it points out how this represents the stories we tell ourselves, these mental constructs.
Right. It's almost like he's saying these stories can pull us away from the actual experience of the present moment.
Yeah, and that's a core idea in Zen philosophy, this idea that our usual way of understanding time is, well, kind of an illusion.
Uh-huh.
Dave's Backyard, on the other hand, with its fragmented, layered style that feels much more immediate, like a snapshot of the present moment in all its messy complexity.
Right. It's all these fleeting, disconnected elements just existing right now.
And the commentary emphasizes how that reflects the constant flux of reality, this truth that everything is impermanent, in motion.
And even our thoughts, our stories, they're part of that flux too, right?
Absolutely. They arise, they pass away just like everything else.
It's like those swirling lines in Once Upon a Time. They appear, they fade, like clouds.
Yeah, a beautiful visual metaphor for the transient nature of our mental landscape.
And it's a powerful reminder to not get so caught up in those stories, to really connect with the here and now.
Right, and Camblin, he's using his art to not just depict something, but to engage with these philosophical ideas, to make us think about how we perceive time and how we create meaning.
He's inviting us to question our own narratives.
Precisely. And that tension between Once Upon a Time and Dave's Backyard, it's so effective in highlighting that contrast between the narrative and the lived present.
Right, between the stories we tell ourselves and the actual experience of reality.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to another big theme in his work, impermanence and decay.
Right, and that's really hammered home in the description of the lithographs as remnants of a story half told, preserved, or decaying in time.
Yeah, there's this sense of things falling apart, fading away, but also being preserved in a way.
And it ties in beautifully with the Zen acceptance of the natural cycle of things, arising, existing, and dissolving.
Birth, life, death, the whole shebang.
Exactly, it's all part of the process.
And the YouTube commentary brings in this fascinating connection to the I Ching hexagram 18, work on what has been spoiled, decay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and this hexagram talks about the importance of addressing what's deteriorated, whether it's neglected stories, unresolved memories, even physical decay.
Right. And Dave's backyard, with its fragmented nature, it could definitely be interpreted through that lens.
Yeah, like those broken branches and scattered text, they're these spoiled fragments.
And the very act of viewing them, contemplating them, that becomes the work on what has been spoiled.
Wow, that's a really cool way to connect those ideas.
It is, and it suggests that even within decay, there's potential for renewal, for deeper understanding.
Right, it's not just about things falling apart, it's about what we do with those broken pieces.
Absolutely. And by acknowledging the impermanence of everything, including our own personal histories, we can maybe find a greater appreciation for the present moment and a new way of moving forward.
It's like embracing the decay rather than fearing it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about Camlin's views on the nature of art itself and how it should be interpreted.
Wow.
The book review you sent, it asks this great question. What is art but a series of questions disguised as images?
That's a good one.
And that really seems to sum up Camlin's approach, wouldn't you say?
It does. And the foreword from Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, it talks about his art as a portal to heightened awareness.
I like that.
Yeah, it's not just about aesthetics. It's about sparking a deeper engagement, almost like a contemplative practice.
He wants to make you think, to challenge your assumptions.
And the review even calls his drawings paradoxes made visible and blueprints for ideas.
Wow, that's a really cool way to describe them.
They're not meant to be definitive statements, but rather these open invitations for personal contemplation.
They're like puzzles or riddles that you have to solve.
Right, and that ties into his understanding of the artist's role, his intention.
Okay.
The biography, it highlights his desire to create art that speaks directly to the viewer's soul, bypassing all the intellectual analysis, going straight to the heart of the matter.
And like a visceral connection.
Exactly. And he deliberately moved away from traditional standards, to explore the mystical, to evoke those subjective states of mind.
He wanted to make you feel something, not just think about it.
Right. And he even used hidden meanings, secrets, what he called data problems within his drawings.
Like he's embedding clues for the viewer to find.
Yeah, and it's not random. It's deliberate, meant to stimulate that active engagement, that self-discovery.
So it's not just about passively observing his art, it's about actively participating in it.
Precisely. It becomes this dialogue, this back and forth between the artist and the viewer.
And in trying to decipher his intentions, you might end up uncovering something about yourself.
Exactly. It's a journey of exploration.
Now, Camplin was also a big collaborator, right?
He was.
He worked with Earl Staley and Joe Tate under these collective names, B&E Productions and The Holding Firm.
Right. And those collaborations, they were about challenging those traditional notions of art making, authorship.
Okay.
It was about the creative process itself, pushing the boundaries of what art could be.
And how did that influence his individual work, do you think?
Well, I think working in those groups, it must have challenged his individual perspectives. It broadened his approach.
Right, like bouncing ideas off other people, getting out of your own head.
Exactly. And they organized these really unconventional shows, like the tattoo show, long before tattoos were mainstream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they did these kind of anarchic experimental construction projects together.
Sounds like they're having a lot of fun.
They were, and it shows this playful side of Camplin, this willingness to experiment, to break the rules.
And then there's this shift later in his career where he starts signing his work as anonymous or even Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut.
Yeah, it's like he's rejecting the idea of individual fame, artistic ego.
It's a radical move, and Staley mentions how Camplin just stopped selling or giving away his artwork altogether.
Really?
Yeah, fully embracing this anonymous persona.
Wow, it's like he's saying the art is more important than the artist.
Right, and it makes you think about his evolving views on fame, on identity, on the purpose of creating art in the first place.
It's like he's transcending the individual, reaching for something bigger.
Absolutely.
Okay, one last thing I want to touch on is this idea of Camblin's art fostering what one of the book reviews calls everyday enlightenment.
Everyday enlightenment. I like that.
Yeah, what do you think they mean by that?
Well, the review suggests that his art achieves this by kind of subverting our usual ways of seeing the world.
Okay.
Presenting the absurd, finding humor in decay, embracing those contradictions.
It's like he's shaking things up, making you look at the world from a different angle.
Exactly. And it's not about some big, sudden revelation, but those subtle shifts in perspective.
Like those aha moments.
Right, those little sparks of insight that you get from really engaging with his work.
And the acceptance of impermanence, that's a big part of it too, right?
Absolutely, acknowledging that everything is in flux, that nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, and the review talks about how that can be a liberating force.
It can. It's about letting go of the need to control, to hold on,
Embracing the flow of life, the constant change.
and finding peace within that.
All right, so the biography also covers Camblin's later years, his decision to leave academia, his nomadic travels.
Right, he went all over Italy, France, Mexico, the South Pacific.
Sounds like he was really living his art.
He was fully immersed in it.
And then he settles in Oregon, then Louisiana, kind of disappears from the radar.
Yeah, and that just adds to the mystery, doesn't it?
It does. He's this enigmatic figure, leaving behind this incredible body of work, but never seeking the spotlight.
And even those attempts to organize a big retrospective exhibition in Houston, they fell through.
Like he didn't want to be defined by that kind of recognition.
It's like he was content to let the art speak for itself.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that Camblin's world was deeply connected to Zen principles. This focus on the present moment, the acceptance of impermanence.
Right, and he constantly challenged those traditional ideas about art, always trying to provoke thought, to encourage self-discovery.
And he did it all while maintaining this intriguing persona, both collaborative and fiercely independent.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story.
It is, and for you, the learner, Camblin's journey is a great example of how art can intersect with philosophy, with personal growth.
His questioning of assumptions, his embrace of ambiguity, the way he demands active engagement from the viewer.
Yeah, that all resonates with your own thirst for knowledge, right? That desire to go beyond the surface.
And the multi-layered nature of his pieces, it means there's always something new to discover.
It's like a treasure hunt. You keep finding new clues, new insights.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
Think about those stories you carry with you, as the YouTube commentary put it so well. What if you looked at your own life narratives through a Camblin-esque lens?
Interesting.
Acknowledging their impermanence, searching for meaning in those fragmented moments, really embracing the present moment.
How might that change your understanding of yourself, of the world around you?
Yeah, because maybe the real art of enlightenment, as Camblin's life suggests, isn't about finding all the answers, but about the journey of exploring the questions themselves.
The journey itself is the reward.